Just sit right back and you'll hear why I made Chris watch some crap. I didn't plan any other verses. So welcome to another episode of This Crap Was on National Television, and I'm Kirk Buchner, the owner, the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. You can vote now at www.notinhallofFame.com/USA for the first ever American Hall of Fame class, because hey, nobody came up with it, but I did, and I trademarked it. It's mine. It's all mine. So yeah, nobody came up with it. Crazy, huh? But with that, we are going to go from that to Gilligan's Island, and I gotta say, it's really interesting. I used to live on, well, it wasn't a deserted island, and you're doing this from Costa Rica, while I'm here at the mountaintop of Mount Manitoba. So
yeah, we couldn't be at more different places.
That usually is the case. I don't think we'll probably never do this in the same country. Saying that, before we get into the review, I just want to say something that I found really cool as I follow you on social media, of course. You got to promote your film and had a screening and please tell everyone about it, because I want to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. So yeah, back in June, during Juneteenth weekend, I got invited to go to the first Black Wrestle Fest in Brooklyn, New York. So they had a screening of Lady Wrestler, which is the documentary I made about the Black women who integrated pro wrestling in the 50s. So it was really cool. Everybody there was really, really supportive. A weird technical thing happened where I had sent the organizer, I have to give a shout out to Danielle Sullivan, the organizer. She was just awesome. She is awesome. But I had sent her a Dropbox link to the documentary. Mm-hmm. And I realized when I got there that if you don't download a file on Dropbox, it'll only play like a preview. So it only played like 15 minutes of the 90 minutes. But everybody was like, oh, wow, I can't wait to go rent it on Amazon. So it's sort of like, kind of like a free commercial to get people. I didn't intend it that way, but everybody was just so cool and so supportive. And it's just weird how this story of these, the original Black women wrestlers originated in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, but it's almost like sometimes I feel like familiarity breeds contempt. Like people in Columbus they're supportive and they're interested in the story, but people other places are like, really like, wow, I didn't know Black women were in wrestling that early. I didn't know women were in wrestling that early, let alone Black women. So it's just interesting that I sometimes feel like I get more of a response or a more enthusiastic response from people in other cities and other countries than I do in my hometown where the story originated, which is just, I don't know, I guess that's life, but yeah, it's just interesting.
That is interesting, but sometimes you just never know. Sometimes like now living in Winnipeg, it's just fascinating to me what is massive here, and really a lot of stuff that I didn't grow up learning.
Right. I didn't know about the women wrestlers until a mutual friend introduced me to Ethel Johnson, who was the first Black wrestling champion. And I have to mention A&E, the cable network, aired a mini biography of Ethel on July 19th, I believe. So that was another thing that just sort of, I didn't pursue that. A producer from A&E contacted me and said, hey, we want to spotlight these three sisters, Ethel, Babs, and Marva, who were the first Black women in wrestling. We want to do one of our mini biographies. So that was really cool. That was interesting too, because the way I posted it on social media, some people misinterpreted it as A&E is doing an hour-long biography on Ethel Johnson, when I guess I should have said they're doing a PSA, like a minute-long PSA. So people literally, Kirk, contacted me and was like, how do I set my DVR? It's not listed on biography. And I'm, I wanted to reply and be the smart ass I am, like, I don't know how to tell you how to program your DVR. If you program it from 8 to 9, it will tape the thing that I said it's going to air. You just have to trust me that I'm not lying or making this up. but it was cool. Everybody was really supportive. And once again, the story of these women got exposed to a wider audience. So it was really cool.
And I saw that there was some current wrestlers there.
So I'm sorry, what?
I saw that there were some from your social media. I saw that there's some.
Yeah. Big Swole was there, and Trisha Dora, who I'd interviewed through Zoom but never met before. Actually, I take that back. I had met her once when she came to Ohio for a wrestling match. So it was cool to get to meet them in person, and like Daryl Johnson, Dr. D, who's like a big wrestling promoter and advocate. We had done interviews but never met in person, and finally got to meet in person. So it was just a great, awesome experience being there on Juneteenth and I'd screened once before in New York at the Museum of the Moving Image, but getting to screen there again was really cool.
Did you get to interview Big Swole?
I didn't get to interview her, but I did get to meet her and fanboy out and take photos with her.
Yeah. her departure from AEW was very interesting. So
yeah.
But we can go into that on another time, because she certainly had a lot to say about that. And I don't know, wrestling has gotten very interesting again with I wasn't we could talk wrestling, but I guess I am for one more minute. So I guess Vince McMahon is gone.
Yeah, I haven't followed all the details, but that's like definitely end of an era.
It's not a bad end of the era. It actually made me watch something for the first time. I watched SummerSlam on Saturday night, and I think it might be the first time that I actually made an effort in years to watch it, and it was actually pretty good, all things considering. So we'll see how things will go. Actually, the biggest change was on the commentary, because they got Vince now in their ear. So it actually felt like two people were actually calling something as opposed to being told what to say, because it was.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there. We're here to comment. Oh, bad segue. On the Harlem Globetrotters visit Gilligan's Island. And I pitched this. Originally, we were going to try to do Automan, but for whatever reason, I think we have found it and then it disappeared or whatever, but so be it. This might be better. I pitched this a while ago and then I found it on Facebook. Of all things. So credit to the Basement Tapes on Facebook. That's where I found it. This is something I remember as a kid. I don't remember it being, I knew it was cheesy and bad, but I didn't remember it. But then I saw it as when I was 11. Now I'm seeing it near 50.
Yeah.
Gilligan's Island, just putting that in this weird historical perspective, only ran for 3 years. But it ran forever in syndication. I'm sure, like me, Chris, like you probably saw every rerun over.
Yeah, I definitely grew up on Gilligan's Island. It wasn't like a favorite show of mine, but it was on so much. It was ubiquitous that you could not avoid it. Right. So it was like when I was bored, that's just, I just camp out in front of the TV in front of Gilligan's Island.
And it was, you say camping in front, it was campy. So, people liked it. They knew that there was plot hole upon plot hole, and most of us didn't care because it was fun. So when they resurrected that, they resurrected it for a cartoon at first,
right? And
then it became a TV movie where they finally got off the island, only to wind up back there. And then they had another movie where they left the island, and this was, I should have found this one because I don't think I ever saw it, which was the second Gilligan's Island movie, which they tried to pitch it as a Love Boat type of film. So that, because the first half, they escape from the island again when they find World War II planes or something. I don't know. Then the second half, the Howells made the Castaway Resort. And there was like guest stars coming to visit. The first one, and this is going to be a throwback to what we've already done, was Tom Bosley.
Oh, wow. Mr. C.
Yes.
From Happy Days.
Yes. And his wife was played by Marsha Wallace, who was a big star. I guess a big star, a Newhart. And for more modern fans, Edna Krabappel, the voice of Edna Krabappel in The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. And so the second half apparently was just the misadventures of them as they were all sort of on this island. But I digress. The third film, which is this, and the third and final film actually, although I thought this was the end. Apparently they did Gilligan's Planet a year after this.
Oh, really?
A cartoon.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were still trying to milk that one, which actually all the they were all still there doing their own voices, except
Oh,
for
cool.
Ginger, of course. And we'll get more into that later. So we start off with the familiar, but they added so you know now the story. They got off the island and the Howells bought it, and here we have the opening credits. Obviously, we've got two big things that stand out. Number one, is a different Ginger, Constance Forland, who I couldn't find anything else she ever did. And based on this performance here, that's probably a good thing.
I didn't realize it wasn't the original actress. I kept thinking like there was something a little different, but I thought it was, I didn't know until I looked at the Wikipedia page that it was a different actress, because it said neither actress who played Ginger was willing to come back. And I didn't realize there was a second Ginger, like Bewitched, like another Darren.
Well, from the other movies.
Oh, from the other movies. Okay.
Yeah. So Tina Louise never reprised her role, never did cast reunions. I think maybe she did one or two. She just said this ruined her career. And she's not wrong, or maybe it just limited her career, which might be more accurate. Because who the hell knows what she would have done without this? Don't know.
Well, she was doing a Marilyn Monroe impersonation. So, I mean, that's like the ultimate typecasting. If that's what you get known for, then why not lean into it? I mean, Carrie Fisher talked about how she didn't make the money off Star Wars that people thought she did, because that was before actors were given like percentage points of the gross. And Carrie Fisher very boldly said, "Hey, I go to all the conventions and I call them lap dances." She's like, "Oh, I can go buy this new purse after I do the lap dances at the next Star Wars convention." Why take yourself so seriously?
And that's pretty much the attitude that the rest of them had.
Yeah.
Bob Denver pretty much was Gilligan the rest of his life. People may not remember. Well, why would they? I wouldn't remember. I just know that he had a decent career going into that. He played Maynard G. Krebs on the Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. So
Yeah.
he already had a career. Jim Backus was already very successful, always working. Russell Johnson was you can find old things of him in old westerns, which is kind of interesting to see. But once they were in Gilligan, that was it. And like you said, six of them leaned into it.
Yeah.
And Tina Louise never did. I think she's still alive. I'm not sure. I think the rest are all dead.
Right.
I could be mistaken on that, but I get the chip on her shoulder, especially to your point earlier, Chris. They didn't get paid
for the reruns, right?
Yeah, they got nothing, or if they did, it was pittance. So you're still now. Gilligan's Island, as weird as it is, in 1977, it was bigger than it was in 1967, and it was off the air.
Yeah, which is wild. Yeah.
So here we are in 1981, and all right, so after the opening credits, then it's the placard of Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, which, of course, the special guests were the Harlem Globetrotters. There's a shock there. Were you a fan of the Globetrotters when you were a kid?
Yeah, they were one of those like 70s and I guess early 80s phenomenons that were just like, you couldn't miss them. Even a kid like me who wasn't athletic, you just couldn't avoid them. They were everywhere. And they were also more entertainers, obviously, than they were athletes. Even though they were great athletes, it was more about entertainment than actual athleticism. But yeah, I mean, I was aware of them, and they were part of the culture.
Mm-hmm. I was also unathletic, but I was a wannabe. I'm still this wannabe sports geek, but so be it. But yeah, the Globetrotters they were something that you'd see regularly on TV, either sometimes in playing, like the Wide World of Sports on ABC would show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know what I saw first, this movie or one of their games, probably one of their games on TV. I never did see them live, but I think a lot of us is sort of the classic lineup, with the exception of Meadowlark, who I think was retired by then. But so we got Geese Osby, Jimmy Blacklock, Nate Branch, Sweet Lou Dunbar, everyone's favorite, Curly Neal.
Of course.
Yeah. Robert Page, Twiggy Sanders, and Dallas Thornton. And pretty much Curly gets almost all the good lines, as he should. He had the best comic timing. But yeah, this was sort of like a taking me back. I didn't know this until like I was much older about the actual history of the Harlem Globetrotters, who were a legit pro basketball, well, pretty much a basketball team before the league was integrated, which
Yeah.
blew my mind as a little kid. Like, what do you mean they didn't let black people play basketball? That's all.
Well, I mean,
Like, what
they
is,
had I mean, it was like the Negro leagues. I mean,
yeah.
in baseball. I mean, yeah, we think now, okay, a lot of the sports that are most popular in the US, at least, football, basketball, are dominated by African Americans. But how can you dominate something if they're not even going to let you play?
Which is insane that actually happened. And like, I think that might have been one of my first sort of like, oh, no, not my first, but just sort of like a lesson of just like how weird things were, I guess, when you grow up as sort of like this white suburban kid and what was then predominantly an all white area,
Right.
and your knowledge of basketball at that point when you're a kid is, okay, well, here's what I see on TV and it's pretty much 90% black.
Yeah.
Was it always this way? What? Why?
Yeah. Right. Plus, I'm sure in Canada, I don't know if you in school were taught the history of like American race relations and segregation and all of that. Okay.
Well, very, very, very poorly. I was really into history. That was probably one of the classes I paid a lot of attention to. So when we did sort of like talk about that, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, we did go through the Civil War and whatnot, but I remember the teachers more framing it as it wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights.
Interesting.
That's the way he framed it, which looking back, of course, later on, that same teacher got arrested for pedophilia. So I dodged a bullet, didn't I? Oh,
wow.
Yeah. And I funny enough, years later, I was working for this one travel company and someone who I went to school with in that same class. And then here he was. So then we were talking about that, like, man, how did we not all notice this? But
right.
Incidentally, on that same company, there was a guy there who used to play for the Washington Generals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And apparently they actually tried to win.
Okay.
Those games, which is, imagine you're a Washington General like that. I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
But
right.
So this is our classic lineup. Guest stars Martin Landau, who I guess this was not the high point of his career. Hard to believe that he would later win an Oscar.
Yeah, and again, reading the Wikipedia page, I didn't know that his co-star, the evil scientist or lady or whatever, Barbara Bain, was like his wife, and they were some kind of like husband and wife on-screen team. I had never heard of that.
They were in some show I never watched, Space 1999.
Okay, never heard it. I had never heard of the show.
Ran a few years from what I read, but I don't think I've ever seen an episode. Scatman Crothers, who played the coach. Everyone loved Scatman, but this is I don't know if this is sort of a downfall from a year, because a year before he was starring with Jack Nicholson in the best role of his life. But I think what sort of got me a little bit more upset when I just typed in Scatman, the first thing that comes up was that stupid song from the 90s.
Okay.
So like, God, you don't get first billing over Scatman Crothers. That's awful.
Right, right.
Dreama Denver, who was Bob Denver's wife. It's the only time I'm going to mention her because she played the Howell secretary and her role was completely useless.
Yeah, I guess she was comic relief because she had a very over-the-top Southern accent. I don't know if that was her real accent or if that was just a character.
Don't know, don't care. Stu Nahan and Chick Hearn, so two legit broadcasters. Rosalind Chow, who again, we'll talk about her now because she had like one line.
Right.
So, man, I think if I would have been watching that then, and if you would have said to me, okay, so who's going to be probably the hardest working actor in this whole group? I wouldn't have picked her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think she was even in the Milan reboot 2 years ago. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think she had a pretty sizable role in that. So she's had one phenomenal career, but here she was just tropical eye candy.
Right, right. So I guess Gilligan didn't hurt her career, unlike Tina Louise.
No, but it would have hurt. Well, I thought her career might have been done from when she was in After MASH.
Oh, I never saw that. I didn't really watch MASH. I mean, it was on all the time, and you couldn't help but catch bits and pieces of it. But yeah,
Well,
didn't catch after MASH.
she married
That's how
Klinger
one did.
in the last episode.
She had a cameo.
She married Klinger.
Oh, okay.
So then she probably thought, okay, I'm now set because I've got fourth billing on one of the most anticipated shows ever.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that After MASH was the only show ever to finish first in its time slot or for the week and its first debut episode. And on its last episode, it was dead last for the week.
What a record to set.
Yes. And then starring George the Robot and the New Invincibles. So just me, or did those robots look like penises?
My mind didn't go there, but now that you say that, yeah, they did.
Yeah, well, you're the more mature one of this duo.
Or more naive, maybe.
I don't think that's what Sherwood Schwartz was going for. God, I hope not. So our first scene, Gilligan and Skipper, they're in the same stuff that they've always been in. Why are you still living together?
Right. If it's a luxury resort.
Why are you in the same clothes? It's okay. I get that on the TV show, you only had the one shirt. What? All right, well, all this is a comedic pratfall to show that Bob Denver, who's only 46 at the time, I thought he would look much older.
Yeah, I actually thought that about the entire cast. I actually, before I looked up the information about it, I thought, well, this must have been filmed like just a few years after the show went off the air, because they all look like relatively the same. And
Except well, Gilligan did.
Yeah, he looked a little older, but I thought, considering it had been like 15 years or whatever, I thought they looked pretty well preserved.
Oh, Marianne especially. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
All right. So really the whole thing is just to set up a pratfall so Gilligan can sort of and he can still do it. So kudos on his physical comedy, which he got to show. And he was, I mean, if you're going to be Gilligan, go all out. He did. So that's all that sets up. And then we cut to the Globetrotters, who were in a plane. Apparently, and we know it's the Globetrotters because we hear Sweet Georgia Brown.
Right.
They must hate that song.
I would imagine it's like being a band that you're a big hit, you have to play it because fans are not coming to hear your new stuff. It's sort of like just you're on autopilot. It has to play. The song has to play.
So this is a great segue. Speaking of autopilot, apparently not only is Scatman, I'm just gonna call him Scatman. I'm not gonna bother with the character name. He's also the pilot. And the engineer.
Right. That was a good idea.
I know a lot of, I don't know them personally, but there's a lot of intelligent basketball coaches. Greg Popovich comes to mind. I'm sure that he's capable of flying a plane if he went to school for it, but I don't think he has the time for it. Luckily, Scatman does. And they know that they're going to crash into the ocean. Hopefully they're going to make it to an island. And they're pretty calm about this.
Yeah, they're just very nonchalant. Oh, I guess we're not going to make it to the game or wherever it is they were flying to.
I don't know if according to Wikipedia, they're coming back from a world tour. I thought they said they're on their way to a world tour. I don't know.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Either way, they're certainly handling turbulence a lot better than I would.
Yeah.
Maybe that shouldn't have been the film I should have watched right before I'm going on a plane in a few hours. But anyway.
Oh, no.
Yeah, if I hear this is your captain and it sounds like Scatman, I'm getting off the plane.
Well, you are dead because, yeah, Scatman is not with us anymore. So, yeah, if you're hearing his voice, you would not be with us.
There's also that.
Yeah.
And then we got right to Martin Landau. And we learn right, his character's name is J.J. Pearson. He is the rival of Thurston Howell III, and he's telling his evil plans to George the Robot. Because the castaway, apparently this made no sense because this is the perfect place because they still are acting as if there's nothing there. There's no cars, there's no luxury, there's no nothing. Meanwhile, there's actually clearly electricity and everything on the island, but
right.
Okay, whatever. And he stayed there before and he found supremium. Mhm.
Yes.
Which is, well, just the white glob, just the big giant white prop. I don't know how else to describe it.
And you're not talking about the captain, right? You're talking about Supremium.
Well done. Well done. This well, Skipper lost some weight.
He did, yeah.
He wasn't as big as rotund as I remembered.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and his wife, or not his wife, but Olga, played by Barbara, just shows up with that white blob and says it's like pure energy. And look, and Martin Landau or JG says, I'm the only one who knows about that. Of course, then we cut to Gilligan, who's got one using it as a lamp. Part of the evil plan is to, I guess, kill the castaways. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of legal loopholes here, but whatever. And George is already there. George the robot's there because he's now put a spider near on Gilligan, who wakes up, and it just leads to more pratfalls because now how do I? Well, it turns out it's not just a spider; it's a deadly poisonous tarantula because the professor runs in and knows what this is on the spot. Ginger and Marianne also had the same problem. Huh? Well, professor wants to investigate.
You know, speaking of art imitated life this week, because I actually fell out of a hammock here in Costa Rica.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend had texted me, and I replied back, you know, I'm in Costa Rica, and he replied back with a meme of chilling with some, you know, like a meme of somebody laying in a hammock. And then I was like, oh, I have to go lay in this hammock and take a picture and text it back to my friend. And of course, I proceeded to like fall on my ass out of the hammock.
I feel a lot more coordinated now. Although I did flip in the ocean in the Pacific when my wife and I were trying to kayak, which leads me to this. The Globetrotters are in a lifeboat, putting zero effort into actually paddling. They're not, these are world-class athletes. I don't know how they're moving anywhere when they're just doing this.
Right, right.
Well, and again, they're super calm, and the only thing they brought with them was basketballs, which came in handy when the mechanical shark showed up. I mean, it's supposed to be a real shark, and then just, you know, Jaws was big, so of course you're gonna have to have a shark. And then they threw the basketball and four basketballs in the shark's mouth. It just was completely still.
Yeah.
While that was happening, and like, you know, it worked. So
it's like they borrowed the shark from Saturday Night Live. They didn't even attempt to get to make the shark realistic looking.
You know, that's the other interesting thing. So this was on NBC, I believe.
Yes.
So there had to have been a budget for this, or did Sherwood Schwartz just pocket the money and just cut corners everywhere he could?
Yeah, I think that was the case, because it was very clear the Globetrotters were just in a big tank paddling in boats. It didn't even look like they took them on location to the Pacific Ocean, which borders LA.
Oh, I forgot the other big addition to the cast, Thurston Howell IV.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about him later. Played by David Ruprecht, who always did work. Apparently, he was the host of something called the Supermarket Sweep.
Okay.
That ran for 3 years. So I mean, he always did work. So give him credit for that. Back on the resort, Gilligan's doing all the grunt work, and this is where we learn that they're all equal partners. You know, in the resort, which is kind of nice. Until then, Skipper's now drooling over 20-something girls, which is, you know,
pre-Me Too, definitely.
Definitely pre-Me Too. Definitely also, what are you going to do? You're going to take him to your hammock?
Yeah.
When Gilligan's sleeping above you? Is
right.
That, like, you know, for someone who certainly seemed to be very interested in the opposite sex, I don't know how he would actually do anything.
Exactly.
Skipper has no game.
Like, my hammock or yours, I guess, was his line.
I think he was just sort of, and then also too, the more uncomfortable thing, and all these women are saying, "Oh, he's cute." Okay. They're three good-looking 20-somethings are not saying that about a senior citizen. Or if they did say he's cute, it's not in that vein.
Yeah, more like puppy dog cute.
Yeah. Well. All right, so we meet Thurston Howell IV, and pretty much, what's this guy supposed to do? He's pretty much directed, okay, just do an imitation of Jim Backus.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't great, but what's he supposed to do? So I guess I give him a pass. And Skipper, he's only there because he wants to get the weather report so that he can just go have another reason to chat with the girls.
Right.
Again, no game. Well, they put it on the TV, and then they see the news about the Globetrotters, how they've been lost at sea. Well, the next scene, Gilligan's actually seeing the Globetrotters who are practicing with coconuts because, Scatman says, hey, practice. Okay. Gilligan runs to tell everybody, and they don't listen to him, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't listen to Gilligan. Don't listen to Gilligan on anything. I think the best thing about this was on a Cheers episode. Rebecca's father is there, and he's watching Cheers with all of them, and he's a retired admiral or something, and he says, if they just would have shot Gilligan. Yeah. They would have been off the island, and it's true. So Gilligan says that, hey, I just seen people who were just good, and just thankfully, they're doing a whole highlight reel of just everything about the Globetrotters, because that's generally something when you're doing a news piece, you're just going to show highlight reels of them playing as opposed to for 3 minutes. But anyway, that's sort of what they do.
Right.
And well, Gilligan figures out it's the Globetrotters, and now they're welcome guests. We later see Marianne, who's now teaching aerobics.
Something like, or it looked more like Jane Fonda. I guess Jane Fonda aerobics, because that was so big in the early 80s.
Did this predate Jane Fonda aerobics though?
I think, this came out before. This would have been like maybe around or like right before Olivia Newton-John came out with Physical. So it was definitely the aerobics craze of the early 80s. We
used to have this thing in Canada, and okay, I'm not really necessarily proud of this, but as a kid, that's what I did. City TV which was a Toronto-based channel, so they just had cheap programming. Remember I told you, like when we did the Beachcombers episode, which incidentally is getting a ton of comments.
Oh, interesting, cool.
Yeah. Just a lot of people very nostalgic. So I thought that was sort of interesting that might be one of our more successful episodes.
Cool.
Go figure that one out. Anyway, so part of the cheap program they did, it was just called 20-minute workout, and all it was just these girls in leotards just doing that. And one of the lead ones would later have a small role in The Terminator.
Oh wow. So as like what, the roommate or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
So in the early days of the Betamax and VHS, I used to record that just to watch it go up and down and then fast forward because I thought,
Again, pre-Me Too.
Pre-Me. I was also 12.
Yeah.
And that I know that, and I know this from talking to classmates, I wasn't the only one who did it.
Well, I just had to wait for a Vanity 6 or Sheila E. or Apollonia video to come on.
Vanity 6. Sheila E. still looks fantastic. Still
does.
Talent.
So does Apollonia. Apollonia has a YouTube show now.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
And Vanity became a born again Christian and died.
Yeah, she passed away the same year as Prince, actually.
Was it the same year?
Yeah, Vanity passed away in February. He passed away in April.
Oh, okay. Yeah, such a pretty mess on my dress.
Yeah, I wonder what that's referring to.
Oh my God. Whatever. Anyways, they're pretty much doing, Ginger teaches Marianne a new dance, which is called the salt and pepper, because you just shake until the music stops. So I guess kind of an excuse to watch them bounce up and down, and
right.
Marianne looked great. I mean, I don't know how anyone watched all this stuff before and saw interviews with Dawn Wells and just didn't say, like, how do you not love this woman?
Yeah, she's just so humble and just takes it all in stride.
Yeah. Well, George tried to kill them, not very well, because he undid a bolt, and then of course you see this gag a mile away because you know that it's going to fall with the windows just going right through them. Whatever. George isn't very good at this, and then he tries to. I don't know what he's trying to do. So he's trying to poison the professor, but just gave some kind of poison that he used on his plants, and then the plants again, very, very poor special effects.
Yeah.
Like, just, I know you have a budget. You had to have had a budget for this. I don't know. And then another bit, Gilligan and Skipper trying to fix the gym, but of course Gilligan messes it up because he's Gilligan. Whatever. JJ shows up, and then we get a plot point. I will say this. What Gilligan's Island and Sherwood Schwartz is always very good at is you don't have to figure out what's going on. He lays out these plot points pretty quick. You're getting right to it. Yeah, okay, it's not subtle, but it's fine. This shouldn't be.
No, I mean, you're not watching a Gilligan's Island reunion movie for subtlety and subtext.
Yeah, exactly.
Or acting.
Yeah. Yeah, and we learned that Martin Landau or JJ always beats Thurston Howell IV in bets, always. And then and then he says, "I'll bet you $10,000 that it's going to be as dark as night in 1 minute." I guess he didn't look at the news or the weather thing because he didn't know about the eclipse that just happened right there, and the world's fastest eclipse just happened. I had a headache at this point. Gilligan meets George. I thought actually that, because I didn't remember much of this, I thought that these two were actually going to become buddies. I don't know why I thought that, because they seem to have a bit of a kinship. Right. That didn't happen. The Globetrotters are practicing, and somehow, even though they didn't pack anything or they didn't bring they have their practice uniforms on. I think they tried to explain it that they made it there, but how do they do that if there's no, whatever?
There was nothing in the boat other than them and their basketballs.
So, which they also used as pillows on the plane. Maybe I'll try that, see how that works out for me.
Yeah, it sounds comfy.
Oh yeah, sounds great. Anyways, while they're doing that, JJ's lurking, and he comes up with a master plan, which wouldn't come out for another 30 minutes. Well, Gilligan actually had challenged the Globetrotters to a game, and pretty much this is just a showcase for the Globetrotters to do their greatest hits. One thing I will say, especially after watching their tricks at the end of the game, it made me want, and I think I probably will, I'm going to go back and watch a Globetrotters game from this classic era.
That would be fun. That would be fun.
Yeah, just see some of their greatest hits, and kind of like you said earlier, like you're describing them as sort of like a band. That's pretty much what they did. I think they probably still do the same shtick.
Yeah, I would think yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But hey, good on them. I mean, they've been around longer than any other team.
Right. Yeah, as recently as the teens, I took my nephew to see them in Columbus at Nationwide Arena. Okay. Yeah. And before the pandemic, they came to my city every December as part of their tour.
Did he enjoy it?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he wanted to go up and get autographs afterward. So nice. We were able to do that.
Nice. That's pretty cool. I read that the Washington Generals actually don't exist anymore. So they actually folded. It was so crazy to learn that actually they even had an owner and everything.
Right.
That is insane to me. Imagine what do you think of the pitches? If you're like a young basketball player, it's like, all right, I don't have a lot of options out of college. Yeah, I'm not good enough to play in Europe. Well, I guess I better go get a job.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because for one of the newspapers I freelanced for, I actually interviewed one of the Globetrotters when they came to my city. And he said that like in the Globetrotters off season, he plays in Europe or played in Europe.
I was
And
thinking about the generals, how you pitch to become a general.
oh, the generals.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, but no, the Globetrotters players, they would be good enough to play probably like overseas. I mean, not good enough for the NBA, because otherwise they'd be in the NBA.
Right.
No one's turning down that money.
But also the NBA is just like one of those things where it's like, it's just so, it's like winning the lottery almost. It's not totally like, it's sort of like being in the right place at the right time with all the right circumstances lined up. You know, it's not like every single guy who's good at basketball will ultimately make it into the NBA. It's just not that,
No,
you know, cut and dry.
there's only so many spots. There's
Yeah.
the roster of, I believe, 11 times what, 32 teams, I think.
Right, right.
You're limited. And every year there's a new crop of talent wanting to keep your spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so they have a lounge. And Ginger is singing, and I'm putting this in air quotes, seductively. I want to be loved by you. This is kind of a show. I don't know. They gave her 2 minutes, and she can't sing, or whoever's singing for her can't sing. She doesn't move. For a beautiful woman, this had no sex appeal at all, except for apparently for every man in that audience who was turned on, including Skipper. Like, dude, you've had 30 years.
Yeah, I don't know if it was, maybe this is probably reading too much into it. I don't know if it was part of the joke that, oh, Marilyn Monroe wasn't a real singer, so we're going to have a off-key rendition of I Want to Be Loved by You, and that was the shtick. Like I said, you don't go into a Gilligan's Island movie for subtext. There's probably this lack of budget to hire a good singer, or not lack of budget, lack of putting the money into it.
Did you read who also applied for this job, or for the role of Ginger?
No.
Cassandra Peterson, Elvira.
Oh, interesting. She would have been good.
Elvira did have talent. Do you know now she's in a lesbian relationship?
Okay, well, good for her. I mean, but she was, yeah, I mean, I can see she was a sex symbol for so many years.
Yeah, she met was it a lesbian, or I don't know if it's someone who's a lesbian or someone who identifies as trans or whatever.
Okay.
And just was attracted by, I guess, I don't want to misgender because I don't remember whether that person goes by he or she or something. So it might not even be a lesbian relationship. I'm not even sure. But just somebody she met not that long ago, and they've been together for over a decade.
Well, good for her.
Hey, she's happy. Absolutely. Good for her.
Yeah.
She certainly made a lot of us smile through the years. I actually rewatched Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, that movie.
I've never seen that.
Well, it's horrible, but it's, I don't know, it's still funny. And it's
80s camp or cult classic.
Yes.
Is it 80s or 90s?
80s.
Okay.
Yeah. Also starring Edie McClurg.
Oh, I always wondered what happened to her after Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Well, she was in she played the neighbor in the Hogan family.
Okay.
So I don't know if she's still alive.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. So right after JJ, he says he wants to make a movie with Ginger as the star, a musical version of Gone with the Wind. Okay, I did laugh out loud with that. I thought that was kind of funny. You know, I've never seen Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that, I mean, definitely obviously has not aged well. And it's so, for it to be like considered this classic, it's so dated with all the rear projection, like they're supposed to be in a stagecoach and they're just sitting in a coach in front of a screen with scenery going by. I mean, it's so the technology is so, the Wizard of Oz makes the Wizard of Oz look like Harry Potter. I mean, as far as like the technological, released in the same year. Yeah.
Wizard of Oz really was. I used to look, going back to City TV. City TV would always like show all now more great movies on City TV, and yeah, that would be sort of like a big thing. I think I remember watching that maybe 6 times just when it would show on TV, and that was a big deal to me to watch Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gone with the Wind, I don't know, it's never looked interesting to me, and just as well, I don't see how anyone can even really watch that now. But whatever.
Right.
But one day, maybe. No, I won't. No, I won't. Anyway, and JJ says to Ginger, just based on the way I saw you sing and dance, I know you'll be perfect. Did she dance?
I don't remember. I don't remember any dancing.
I don't think she did. So anyway, so Ginger's an idiot and signs a document for that, like a paperwork for that, because of course she did.
Yeah.
Later on, Professor figures out that someone's trying to kill them. What was it? Based on how the thread of the nuts were taken out on the hut, because it's the strongest bamboo. Sure. Gilligan's being a klutz, and then George, the robots, they're actually bonding. At least so I thought, because then he forces Gilligan to sign over his share by threatening pretty much to, well, destroy him after he karate chops a tree that was perfectly cut. Just even, it was very impressive. And then he ties him up. So Gilligan's now the second one. Now with Marianne, JJ seducing her kind of, but gets her drunk and signs by, what was the trick? You know, I can tell so much about you by your handwriting.
Oh, right.
Well, that's all it took. Marianne's an idiot too. Skipper is even dumber. He's giving Catamaran lessons badly. Because does he just push them? I guess there really wasn't anything further in that water. So yeah, Skipper's being an old pig again, and Olga comes over, and at least this one's sort of age appropriate. And what was the pitch? We're looking for a new captain of our boat, and then they get him to do a test. The lamest test I've ever seen. Is it that easy just to become a naval captain, Chris? I don't know.
It must be.
Yes. So, anyways, apparently he got 93, and he said, okay, just sign your scorecard. What is this, golf? And so, well, I got to go show my little buddy. Wait a minute. And then he read that pretty damn fast. And he realizes he's been had, and then George is there. And we didn't see George beat him up, but whatever. Now he's tied up with Gilligan. Somehow, you remember like in the early James Bond films, and they spoof that in Austin Powers, where, I'm just going to tell you my plan.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just going to assume that everything's going to work out fine. Well, now they're in the cave where apparently Skipper has been told about the Supremium. He even knows the name of it, the same name that JJ came up with.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. While they're struggling, Gilligan has a mango in his back pocket that apparently is, after living in Barbados for a while, I know mangoes aren't exactly juicy. They're very sticky when you crush them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was good enough to get Gilligan free. They escaped the cave, and apparently there was a hole in the cave the whole time. Where
a hole in the cave that matches the plot holes in the movie. Yeah.
I can't even continue because Gilligan's out there pulling on the rock that was blocking the entrance. Oh my God. Olga now tries to trick the professor by awarding him the Pearson Grant for island research. Well, professor is dumb, and he's trying to be warned by Gilligan, but no one listens to Gilligan. And he tells Gilligan to back up, who just happens to walk into the quicksand. Professor signs it, realizes that Gilligan's there, which now the quicksand is now just replaced by sand with a hat on it. And Professor saves Gilligan. But now they've got it signed by virtually everybody but the Howells. Skipper does, however, successfully warn the Howells, as does Gilligan and all the rest of them, because now Ginger and Marianne have realized that, I don't know how they realized this, who told them that this was all a ruse? I guess Skipper did, I don't know. No, how could Skipper have done that? They came in after.
Yeah, I don't remember how they found out.
Doesn't, again, it doesn't matter. JJ, Olga, and George show up, and Thurston Howell, the forward, agrees to buy back. And now this is actually where the play did think ahead with the plot, the only time. He challenges them to a basketball game, knowing that they'll, of course, he's going to say yes to the Globetrotters against the new Invincibles. Did the people from Space Jam rip off this plot?
You know, there's nothing new under the sun.
That's what I wrote. Like this. Anyway, we later learned that. So we learned that the new Invincibles are actually robots, and somehow they were able to get Chick Hearn, renowned basketball commentator at the time. Also, I should mention that Stu Nahan, who was the person who gave the initial report, he had a pretty good year. Do you know what film he was in this same year?
No, what?
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, wow.
So he was interviewing Spicoli in a Spicoli dream sequence.
Oh, wow.
So pretty good year for Stu Nahan.
Yeah.
So then I was also writing down, like, what network is this on? I get ABC, Wide World of Sports.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. So Scatman gives the worst pep talk. Actually, the second worst pep talk, because he's going to give a worse one later. Pretty much saying that he doesn't know what to do. And the commentators, after they're interviewing JJ, say, well, you know, next thing you know, we'll have a toaster for president. Some would say that you already have.
Yeah.
And that joke works for both sides of the political aisle. So pick your poison, folks.
Right.
I'm not getting political. No, I refuse. Well, the new Invincibles are apparently super quick, or the Globetrotters are just standing still. Because they're just, again, just they work that fast forward button a lot on this. One of the robots tripped Neil Curly and then was warned about it, and he destroyed the ball. I don't know how that's not a technical foul, but but Curly did get a foul, only one free throw. You get 2 free throws for this.
Right.
I don't know why that's the plot hole that got me the most upset.
Right.
But it is. JJ freezes the robots to allow them to do a layup. So at halftime, we've got the score of 95-3. 95-3. And pretty much this has happened because the Globetrotters were playing serious basketball. Because again, Scatman is the worst coach in the world. Well, what's he worse? Worse at being a pilot, a mechanic, or a coach?
I'd say pilot. If your plane falls out of the sky, I'd have to say that's kind of worse than losing a game.
He also had one job, and that's fixing.
True.
Plane, he couldn't do that either. But yet it's Scatman. I can't hate Scatman. I can't. If there's anyone that I would have just wanted to just sort of like sit and have a drink with at that time, who'd you pick? For me, it's Scatman. Out of this entire cast of everybody.
Out of the entire cast?
Yeah,
I'd have to say Scatman.
Yeah, like in 1982, cool. Knowing what at that point in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least you think you're going to be entertained. It just seems like, I don't know how you dislike this guy.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'd have tons of stories about everybody in show business.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that he was a character in a Ralph Bakshi film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 6 years before. I've never watched it. I don't even know that I knew it existed. Maybe I don't want to watch it because I think it's his take on Black America in a cartoon. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I want to see that.
You and me both.
Yeah. Having said that, there's a couple of things that he's done I really like, but I did not know that existed. I just assumed not. Oh well, moving on. Well, the professor shows up because Gilligan had, because he was trying to deduce with logic, like, okay, what's going to work? What's got to be the weakness of the robots? Gilligan shows up at halftime, just says, nothing's working. The only thing they didn't do is those tricks. Eureka! And then I'll admit, this is the part I did like. This was nostalgic for me because they were doing all their tricks there. It was fun. It was fun watching them do this. And like I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch it for one of these games.
Yeah, it definitely brought back nostalgia for me as well.
Mm-hmm. And
all the trademark moves, yeah.
Yeah, they did their greatest hits. And yeah, so I also wrote down, Professor is clearly a better coach than Scatman. Now, the robots they're the ones who are just, I guess they just put the costumes there because now they're not moving. Like, okay, fine. Two of the Trotters foul out at the end, near the end of the game. One of them doing, I guess, their same shtick by insulting the ref, because I know that's what they usually do.
Right.
Yeah, because you probably saw them do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And somehow that meant Skipper and Gilligan now come into the game. Okay, why not? Score is 99-98, and they've got two free throws. So two free throws. Again, they don't know how free throws work. Well, the technical was one, but okay. The robots make it. It's 199. So here's the play they drew up. Somehow they figure, okay, we're going to give Gilligan the ball. You're giving Gilligan the ball. You have three Globetrotters, a semi-competent old man, but you're giving the ball to the klutz.
Yeah.
Again, Scatman Brothers is the worst coach in basketball history. Absolutely. So the play is he's badly dribbling the ball. I mean, I can't dribble much. That's if you imagine how I dribble, it's probably like what Bob Denver was doing at this stage. Just very, very poor. And then they form a human chain going towards the robots. Well, Gilligan, of course, he loses the ball. Curly gets it, and he's surrounded by 5 robots. And he manages to get the ball to Gilligan. Now, the other 3, including 2 Globetrotters, are standing on the side. Just Gilligan, throw it. Like, no, pass it to
someone who knows how to, play basketball.
All right. So rather than just run over and grab the ball from Gilligan and just dunk it themselves, they decide to pick up Gilligan and throw him into the hoop. Which, law of physics be damned. I know he's thin, but he fit. And that's it. JJ lost, but he stole all the supremium anyway. But then, hey, didn't you know it's unstable? Boat blew up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then, of course, the last thing, the dinghy just happens to magically fall on.
Right.
Oh, this isn't over. Because Jim Backus shows up finally. Now, here's what I found. Here's what I got way off, because I read over and over, and he probably did too, that, because he was in really poor health. So this is pretty much all he could do. And, the cast all loved him, because I don't see how you don't love this guy either. I mean, going to that whole who would I want to have a drink with at that point, Backus would be number 3.
Okay.
Behind Marianne, Don Wells, and Jim Backus, because he probably has some great Hollywood stories too. Oh, wait a minute. I'm putting them over Curly Neal. That's not right. Huh. All right, Curly's number 2. Who cares? He comes in there, does a whole speech, thanks to the Globetrotters, and apparently what they said is that was his only day of shooting, and then they all gave him like the standing ovation. And
right.
So I just assumed he died shortly after. He didn't. He was alive for another 8 years.
That's good because I read he had Parkinson's. So I mean, that's a degenerative disease that's not something that doesn't result in instant death, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. I missed that he had Parkinson's. But he still had a couple other film credits after, and did continue to voice. He did his own voice in Gilligan's Planet.
Oh, that's great.
So, he lived another 8 years. Just the way in the interviews they made it sound like this was his farewell.
Well, yeah, it's farewell for being on screen, probably, but
that turned out not to be the case either. But it was his on-screen farewell as Thurston Howell III.
Okay. Okay.
So that was I thought that was sort of interesting. And then Chick Hearn asks Gilligan how he did this. He said, practice. Out somewhere, I just had Allen Iverson in my head, practice. I'm talking about practice. And then that was it. 50-year-old or near 50-year-old Kirk could not believe that I turned into my dad. It's like, why are you watching this shit? Yeah. I will never watch this again. I will watch the Globetrotters. I will probably never watch another one of these things. Have I just aged out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything has its kitsch value or nostalgia value. I mean, like you said, for me, it was nostalgic, reliving the time when the Globetrotters were like really, really part of the culture.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I'd ever seen a whole episode of Gilligan's Island all the way through, but it was, cool seeing that everybody had aged well. And, was it well written? Was it deserving of an Emmy? No. But for fans of Gilligan's Island, who the show obviously took on a life of its own after it was canceled, I mean, it was a cool little nostalgia trip.
But it didn't do that well.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Saying that though, I mean, they still reference that all through the 80s. You'd see talk shows with reunions of the 6 of them, not the 7.
Yeah.
Where they would do that over. I don't know for sure, but I wish. I don't think Comic-Con was really going on then. I wish it was back then, because they would have done it, and they should have.
Well, I mean, cast reunions for shows that are like of questionable value happen all the time. I like one day I fell into a rabbit hole watching Dukes of Hazzard reunion YouTube. I mean, there's a show that hasn't aged well in terms of race, with the General Lee and all that. But it was just fascinating to me to hear about all the things that went on behind the scenes that I, of course, as a kid watching it, I never knew about.
If they didn't have the Confederate flag, would it have aged better? Because that's
if it was just a show about some kids or young people growing up in the South, it would have been fine. It was, and I think even at the time, the Confederate flag wasn't as people weren't as aware of how toxic people were. I shouldn't say people weren't aware, but it wasn't. I don't remember it being as controversial because it wasn't. Social justice issues hadn't really come to the forefront. It was sort of like, okay, the civil rights movement has ended, and there's a little bit of a calm before the next wave happens. Next wave of activism happens.
That show made me not realize all that stuff about that flag. I think I wasn't the only one. It's and now it's like how naive what could I have been? But you just like, well, this is what Southern boys are all about.
Right.
You don't think of it, even though I certainly knew what was going on in the Civil War, but you didn't see anyone upset about it.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it was just because it was before social justice issues had sort of come to the forefront through social media and through just people just becoming more educated.
Do you know what I think was the first show? And I saw someone share this. The first show that actually sort of like tackled that, like how that flag is offensive to some, was the sequel after Golden Girls, Golden Palace.
Oh, okay.
So they show like this. I saw this like a couple years ago. I didn't watch Golden Palace because it didn't seem very good. But so this one, Don Cheadle, who's there,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So Blanche, she was proudly putting out the Confederate flag for, I don't know why. And so like that's sort of like the first time. I don't know if that's the first time, but according to whoever shared it, they said, well, look, people were this way back then. So that would have been late 80s, early 90s. I don't know.
Early 90s, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was sort of a teachable moment, and it was for Blanche, because it was like what that flag meant to her was totally different than what it meant to, and I think there was a lot of people like that. I mean, it only took until a couple of years ago for them to take down those flags down at NASCAR. You know, whatever. That's not where I thought this show would go. It never is. It never is. So, but I'll cap off with what I always say. Whose fault was this?
Well, from what I read, it was Sherwood Schwartz's, because apparently somebody approached him, and I don't know if you read the same thing, with the idea of building a Gilligan's reunion movie around the Dallas cheerleaders.
Yes.
So he went full steam ahead with that, and then the cheerleaders, quote unquote, became unavailable. I don't know if that just means they weren't paying enough or what, but like Schwartz wasn't paying enough. But then somehow he substituted the cheerleaders for the Globetrotters.
That was another big thing back then too. It was the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
Yes, yes.
Like a massive big deal.
Yeah.
Why, I don't know. I think just because, I mean, all teams had cheerleaders, I think. Just Dallas.
Yeah, yeah.
Dallas just knew what to do. I mean, the ownership of that team in those early days, they were the ones who, when the NFL said, okay, we're going to start doing things on Thanksgiving. And all teams said, I don't want to do this. Dallas said, no, we're doing it.
Right, right.
And the Dallas Cowboys are Thanksgiving tradition now. I guess so are the Detroit Lions, but no one wants to watch that. They marketed themselves as America's team. I mean, I've got family members who are big Cowboys fans who've never even been within 1,000 miles of Texas.
Yeah.
You know, that's just how it is, because the way they marketed that was a huge deal. I don't know if what plot would they have come up with
for the cheerleaders?
I don't want to know.
Yeah, good question.
Skipper's gonna he's just gonna be drooling over the whole. That would have been worse.
Yeah, that was probably the whole show, going to be the whole plot.
I'll take you back to my hammock and I'll show you my little buddy.
Okay. I'm so glad they were not available.
Oh God. Well, with that, it's time for my promotion. I'm on Amazon too. You can get Chris's film, Lady Wrestler, on Amazon, but you can also get my book about another wrestler, Chavo Guerrero, instant classic, the late great Chavo Guerrero Sr. Check that out. I'm never writing about another wrestler again, by the way. I'm never doing that. Never. But
never say never.
Never say never. But I did enjoy a lot of the experience. Just some of the post experience after me, not as much. But either way, I'm proud of the work I did there. So check that out. Also, last night, oh, thank you, appreciate that. Last night I recorded another classic sports review. I had a special guest, former Bleacher Report writer from and beat writer for the Colorado Avalanche. We looked at the bloody brawl in 1997 between the Red Wings and the Avalanche. So I managed to get a guest who was actually there covering the Avalanche at that time. He wrote a book about Blood Feud, and you can get that also on Amazon.
Cool.
So I'm going to promote that because thank you, Adrian Dater, for being a part of that show. It was really, really cool just to do a deep dive into hockey. I don't know why I pronounce it like that. Evan Nolan and I, we do our regular Hall of Fame show, and Andrea Tessman, Brad Nelson, and I, we just recorded Kokomo on how let's go #1. And pretty much I just ripped on Mike Love the whole time. You think a Skipper's creepy. You should see Mike Love in his heyday. There's a clip out there where, so he would have been, God, I guess, again, in his late 40s. Younger than I am now. But, you know, he's all bald. He's wearing his ball cap because he was bald since he was like 25.
Oh, wow.
And he's just says, no, I'm just the ladies, man. I really like the ladies. Same year also, he got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and said during his acceptance speech, you know, Mick Jagger doesn't have the balls to be on stage with the Beach Boys.
Wow.
There will never be a song called Moves Like Mike Love. Never. That will never happen. So look for that and all that much more on nonhalloffame.com. So wherever you are, wherever you may be, it may not be Winnipeg, it may not be Costa Rica, but we still ask you to stay safe, everyone.